Picture this, the West locks away $300 billion of Russia's money in 2022. Game over, right? Wrong, because while that cash sat frozen, something wild was happening in Moscow. Russia's gold and silver stash just hit $310 billion by the end of 2025. Yeah, you heard that right. But here's where it gets crazy. Russia just did something nobody saw coming. They've started hoarding silver like their life depends on it. And honestly, it might. This isn't just about collecting shiny metal. It's about paying for a war that was supposed to be impossible to fund. Stick with me here, because I'm about to show you how Russia basically turned frozen bank accounts into worthless paper. How they're trading actual gold and silver for weapons in places like Dubai and Beijing. And why Putin is gambling everything on these precious metals. Because if these prices tank, Russia's economy could fall apart overnight. Let's jump to December 2025. Russia's central bank drops their monthly numbers. Buried in all that boring data is one figure that should make Western leaders nervous. $310 billion, $72 billion of that, pure precious metals. Think about that for a second. That's bigger than the entire economy of Finland or Chile. But here's what's really mind-blowing about this number. Yet somehow, their reserves jumped by $112 billion in just 12 months. So what's going on? It's actually pretty simple and kind of brutal. Gold prices absolutely exploded in 2025. We're talking a 60% jump from $2,590 per ounce at the start to over $4,300 by year's end. This is the craziest gold surge since 1979 when it shot up 126% during the oil crisis. At one point in October, gold hit $4,181 per ounce. Russia basically got a $112 billion windfall without doing anything. While Western countries pat themselves on the back for freezing Russian money, Putin's just watching his gold collection grow in value faster than any bank account ever could. But gold? That's just half the story. Something interesting happened in 2024 that most people missed. Russia set aside 51.5 billion rubles, that's about $535 million specifically for buying different precious metals in their 2025 to 2027 budget. And for the first time ever, they officially included silver along with gold, platinum, and palladium. By mid-2025, Russia had added over 4,000 tons of silver to their reserves. Russian companies are planning to dump 36.2 billion rubles, roughly $454 million, just into finding more silver. This is what I call the Silver Shield, and it's not just a cool name. It's a real plan to stop depending on gold alone. Silver gives Russia something that gold can't. It's actually needed for stuff. Solar panels, electronics, military weapons all need silver. As silver becomes harder to find and everyone wants more of it, Russia's setting itself up to control something the world desperately needs. So now the shield has two parts. Gold keeps their wealth safe. Silver gives them power. Now let's talk about the irony that probably keeps Western politicians up at night. February 2022, the European Union, United States, and their friends unleashed what they called their ultimate weapon. They froze somewhere between $300 and $335 billion of Russia's money. Foreign currency, bonds, investments, everything held in Western banks like Euroclear and American institutions. These weren't some rich guy's yachts or fancy houses. This was Russia's government emergency fund, frozen overnight. By late 2025, the EU alone was holding on to $289.5 billion, roughly $339 billion in frozen Russian cash. The plan was obvious. Cut off Russia's ability to pay for military stuff by blocking their money, force Moscow to spend everything they have left, watch their economy crash, and make them beg for peace. On paper, this should have worked perfectly. $300 billion can run most countries for years. But here's the problem with freezing digital money in a world where physical stuff still matters. While $300 billion sits locked in European and American banks, Russia's $310 billion in gold and silver sits in Moscow vaults, completely accessible, totally usable, and getting more valuable every day. The contrast is almost funny. Western governments are still arguing about what to do with frozen Russian money. Should we use the interest to help Ukraine? Should we give it back after peace talks? Meanwhile, Russia's precious metals just made them $112 billion richer in 2025 alone, with zero chance of anyone taking it. This is the big weakness in modern financial warfare. Sanctions work great against digital money, electronic transfers, and banking systems that need Western help. But they're completely useless against physical gold and silver stored in Russia. Russia can't touch their dollars in New York or euros in Brussels, but every single gram of gold and silver in Moscow is as good as cash. They can trade it anywhere: Dubai, Beijing, New Delhi, you name it. The Silver Shield isn't just protecting Russia from sanctions. It's exposing a massive blind spot in how sanctions actually work. Now here's the part that should really worry Western intelligence. How does Russia actually use this gold and silver fortress? The answer is what insiders call shadow exports, a complex network of physical gold and silver trades that slip past every sanction, every banking restriction, every monitoring system the West has set up. Here's the playbook. Russia ships physical gold bars and precious metal materials to middleman countries. These aren't official government deals that get recorded anywhere. They're run through private companies, couriers, and unregulated markets. The gold lands in places like Dubai or Shanghai. Local buyers pay cash for it, usually dollars or euros, or they swap it directly for stuff Russia needs. That money then buys electronics, computer chips, dual-use parts, and sometimes straight-up weapons. The whole deal happens outside SWIFT, outside Western banks, completely invisible to anyone trying to enforce sanctions. The size of this operation is insane. In just the first half of 2025, China bought about $1 billion worth of Russian precious metals, an 80% increase from the same period in 2024. Gold shipments to China doubled in 2024 and kept climbing through 2025. Russia is the world's second biggest gold producer, mining over 300 tons every year, so they've got plenty to export. Companies like MMC Norilsk Nickel are shipping palladium and platinum too. But the United Arab Emirates, especially Dubai, has become the main hub for this shadow trading. In 2024, the UAE imported 66 tons of Russian gold worth $5.4 billion, up from 41 tons in 2023. Russian banks set up schemes where gold physically gets shipped to Dubai and swapped for US dollars or euros. One documented deal involved Russia shipping $725 million in gold to Dubai and Turkish companies in exchange for straight cash. Those funds bought semiconductors for military use and electronics that Western companies wouldn't sell them. The brilliance of the system is how simple it is. When you block bank transfers, Russia sends couriers with gold. When you freeze dollar accounts, Russia sells gold in Dubai for cash. When you ban technology exports, Russia trades gold to Chinese companies that make the exact same parts Western firms won't sell. It's ancient trading brought into the modern world, and sanctions can't touch it. What's even more concerning? The direct weapons deals. Behind that impressive $310 billion number is a financial disaster that Moscow is desperately trying to hide. Let us talk about the National Wealth Fund, Russia's rainy day fund meant to stabilize things during tough times. As of December 1, 2025, the total fund had 13.3 trillion rubles, roughly $166 billion, which is just 6.1% of their projected GDP. Sounds okay until you check what money they can actually spend. The fund's liquid assets, the quick cash in yuan and rubles they can use right now, has crashed to just 4.115 trillion rubles, about $51.4 billion. That's only 1.9% of GDP. This is a 55% drop since early 2022, by late February 2025. Liquid money had already fallen to 3.4 trillion rubles, a 2.5 times decline from before the war. Experts warned in June 2025 that at the rate they're spending, the fund could be totally empty by 2026. By October 2025, Russia had burned through two-thirds of what they had before the war, forcing them to stop taking money from the fund. Why is this happening? Basic math. Russia's military spending is through the roof. The 2025 budget shortfall is expected to hit 7 to 8 trillion rubles. Oil and gas money, which used to be Russia's main income, came in way below expectations at just 8.3 trillion rubles for 2025, down from 10.9 trillion before. Sanctions have made it hard for Russia to earn dollars and euros, so they're relying on yuan and rubles, and those are running out. The cupboard is bare. And here's the desperate move that proves Russia's in crisis. For the first time ever, Russia's central bank started selling gold directly from the National Wealth Fund to pay for budget holes. By November 1, 2025, the fund's gold had dropped to just 173.1 tons after selling over 232.6 tons, more than half of what they had. Estimates say Russia sold up to $30 billion worth of gold, about 230 tons, in 2025 alone. They might need to sell another $15 billion, roughly 115 tons, in 2026. This is unprecedented. Russia spent years buying up gold as strategic insurance, once becoming the world's biggest gold buyer. Now they're selling it off to pay salaries, fund military operations, and keep the government running. The silver shield is being torn apart from the inside, piece by piece, just to survive today. It's not a shield anymore. It's like selling your grandmother's jewelry to pay this month's rent. But Russia isn't just trying to survive. They're building something bigger. The Silver Shield strategy has become a playbook for an entire group of nations trying to escape Western financial control. BRICS, the alliance of Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, plus new members like Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, is watching Russia's strategy very closely. Since 2014, and especially after 2022, Russia cut U.S. dollar holdings in their reserves from over 40% down to under 10%. They built up gold reserves to record levels, now over 2,300 tons. Most importantly, Russia switched to trading in their own currencies. By 2024 to 2025, nearly 90% to 95% of Russia's trade with BRICS partners happens in local money: rubles, yuan, rupees, not dollars. This protects their deals from U.S. sanctions by completely avoiding dollar-based systems. India is the perfect example. As a BRICS founder, India now pays for oil from Russia, their biggest supplier, in rupees. Two-way trade hit over $40 billion by 2025. This blueprint helps India diversify its own reserves, adding more gold while reducing exposure to dollar swings. For India, it's protection against U.S. pressure while promoting the rupee internationally. Saudi Arabia, joining BRICS in 2024, has explored selling oil to China in yuan and reduced dependence on the dollar connection. Russia's shadow fleet tactics and third-party export strategies are inspiring Saudi's own diversification plans, especially as they balance traditional U.S. relationships with new Eastern partnerships. Trade between Russia and Saudi Arabia topped $2 billion, with ongoing talks about using rubles and rials. At the heart of this shift is a radical concept: currencies backed by actual commodities. The BRICS unit, a prototype discussed at recent meetings, would be 40% backed by gold and 60% by a basket of member currencies. This isn't science fiction. It's being developed as an alternative to the IMF system. Precious metals, especially gold and increasingly silver, are the foundation of this new structure. Putin has said de-dollarization can't be reversed, calling it the path to financial independence for developing countries. The Silver Shield idea, investing heavily in physical precious metals to escape Western financial control, has become the BRICS strategy. It's no longer just Russia. It's a coalition representing nearly half the world's population, building a parallel financial system designed to work independently from Washington and Brussels. But here's what should keep Putin up at night. Russia has bet everything on precious metals. And that means they're exposed to one catastrophic risk: a price crash. Gold and silver prices swing wildly. Sure, gold jumped 60% in 2025, but what happens if it drops 30%, 40%, or 50%? Russia's $310 billion shield could shrink to $200 billion or less in a heartbeat. Remember, Russia is actively selling gold now to cover budget gaps. If global prices fall, they'll have to sell even more gold to get the same amount of cash, speeding up how fast their reserves disappear. It's a death spiral waiting to happen. Several things could trigger this crash. An end to the Ukraine conflict might reduce the rush to gold as a safe investment. Strong global economic growth could push investors back towards stocks and bonds. Rising interest rates in Western countries make gold, which pays nothing less attractive compared to bonds. Even a coordinated move by central banks to dump gold reserves and flood the market could crash prices. China, holding massive gold reserves, could decide to sell off, triggering a domino effect. For Russia, a gold price drop would completely destroy the silver shield. Their remaining fund assets would lose value. Budget gaps would explode as they desperately try to sell more gold at lower prices. The ruble, already weak, could collapse completely, causing runaway inflation. Interest rates, already at 21% in late 2025, would need to climb even higher, choking what's left of the regular economy. Social unrest, already brewing with record numbers of Russian citizens panic buying gold in October 2025, could explode. Putin has built his entire economic defense on one bet that precious metals will stay valuable, tradable, and keep going up. It's worked amazingly well in 2025, but it's also created one fatal weakness. Russia isn't a diverse economy with multiple income sources anymore. It's a commodity seller that's militarized its spending, burned through its cash, and now depends entirely on gold and silver holding their value. One major market correction and everything collapses. This isn't just selling family jewelry to get through hard times. This is melting down the jewelry, betting all the money on one number at the casino, and hoping your luck holds. The silver shield has become Russia's life support, and if that gets unplugged, there's no backup plan. So we come to the big question. Is Putin's silver shield a genius way to beat Western sanctions? Or is it just desperately selling off national treasure to fund an endless war? The optimistic take says Russia found a permanent solution. They've proven that physical stuff can replace frozen bank accounts. They've built trade networks with China, India, and other BRICS members that work entirely outside Western financial systems. 95% of Russia's trade now avoids dollars using yuan, rubles, and direct swaps. Their economy grew 3% to 4% in 2024 to 2025, despite the toughest sanctions in history. Total reserves have bounced back to over $600 billion, boosted by gold accumulation and redirected energy sales. From this angle, Russia isn't pawning valuables. They're building a new financial house. They're creating a multipolar system where Western sanctions mean nothing. The pessimistic take tells a much darker story. Russia is draining the national wealth fund at an impossible rate, selling gold to cover deficits that keep growing. Liquid yuan and ruble reserves have crashed 55% since 2022. Inflation is out of control. Interest rates at 21% are killing domestic businesses. People are getting poorer with record numbers buying gold out of pure fear. The silver shield strategy isn't funding prosperity. It's funding war while the regular economy rots. Russia's turn to precious metals isn't vision, it's desperation. They're selling assets because nothing else is left. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Russia has definitely built working alternatives to Western financial systems. Their precious metals strategy has bought them time and flexibility that sanctions were supposed to eliminate. But it's also obvious this can't continue at current spending levels. Selling hundreds of tons of gold every year, emptying the wealth fund, and depending on unpredictable commodity prices isn't a long-term economic plan. Putin's silver shield has worked surprisingly well under the circumstances. It's allowed Russia to keep fighting a long war despite unprecedented financial isolation. It's given other nations a blueprint for reducing dollar dependence. But it's also created enormous weaknesses. Russia's economy is now less diverse, more dependent on one type of asset, and more vulnerable to market shocks than ever in modern times. We started this video with one question. How is Russia funding a war that sanctions were supposed to stop? The answer is the Silver Shield, a $310 billion fortress of gold and silver that Western financial sanctions can't reach. Russia has shown that in a world of frozen bank accounts and swift bans, physical precious metals stay sovereign, tradable, and valuable. But we've also found the cracks in this armor. Russia is selling gold to pay bills, burning through reserves at a scary rate, and gambling everything on prices staying high. The national wealth fund is drying up. The civilian economy is stagnating. And if commodity prices fall, everything could collapse overnight. This is the new face of economic warfare. Sanctions can freeze digital money, but they can't touch physical commodities. Financial isolation can be beaten with barter networks and alternative currencies. The Silver Shield has bought Russia time, flexibility, and a blueprint for resisting Western pressure. But it has also created one point of failure that could bring down the entire Russian economy if precious metals prices crash. Whether this is genius or desperation, one thing's certain: the world is watching. BRICS nations are copying similar strategies. Central banks worldwide are hoarding gold at record levels. The era of unchallenged dollar dominance is facing its first real challenge since Bretton Woods, and it's all built on precious metals sitting in vaults from Moscow to Beijing to New Delhi. Putin's Silver Shield isn't just about funding a war. It's about rewriting how global finance works. And whether it succeeds or fails, the consequences will reshape the world economy for decades. If you found this breakdown valuable, hit subscribe to stay ahead of these critical developments. The financial war between East and West is just getting started, and precious metals are the weapons everyone's using. Until next time, stay informed, stay sharp, and keep your eye on gold prices.